Good morning, everybody. Delighted to welcome you back to the day 2 of the Learning Technologies Autumn Forum. 4 fabulous speakers again today. My name's Andrew Jacobs. I'm hosting the first session today. We've got other people going to be hosting other sessions as well. First up, we've got Michael from Accessible Me. And let me have a check. Oh, I did have the other list open. I had a long list of everybody who I was going to mention this morning. You ever had one of those mornings? Second, we've got Molly and Nuri from Saffron. I'll take it back. Phil and Adrian, sorry, from Elephants Don't Forget. Then we've got Molly and Nuri from Saffron, and then we've got Nigel Payne here this afternoon. Apologies, everybody. I've had those days where, it's early in the morning. And for some people, it's incredibly early in the morning. I love everybody saying hello. Welcome, everybody. And I see we've got Guildford and Barcelona and Leeds and London. London for the win. Delighted to see so many people from Chicago. What time is it in the morning, and what are you doing? Sitting watching these things. Lovely to see Brisbane and from Australia. I see as well. Delighted to be able to introduce this session today. We've got Michael Osborne with us. Mike is Chief Exec of Accessible Me Limited. And really important that we look at this topic in terms of accessibility. We're talking about technology. We went through 4 sessions the other day, which were entirely about accessibility. Oh, entirely about AI, I should say. But we're not talking about the accessibility bits that fall around the back of that. So this is why we've got Michael here today. You will notice that we have some polls. There's already a poll open in the chat. There's a couple of votes have already gone through. Please use the polls. We will be using lots of polls today. We will be using lots of chat. I love the fact that everybody's saying hello. Brilliant to see you all saying hi in the chat. We will be using the chat, but we are going to be using the polls a lot. There's a poll question in there right now. How confident are you in identifying key barriers for people with disability that they face in e-learning? Start answering the question, because we're going to be looking at the polls, and there'll be an ongoing number of polls going in there. So please feel free, have a look at the polls and see what's in there. And I can already see we've got at least a dozen votes gone through. Michael, lovely to see you this morning, Mike. I hope you're well.
Very well, thank you, Andrew, and thank you for the introduction.
No worries. Over to you.
Thank you very much. There we go. So, greetings everyone, and thank you for joining me on today's sessions. My name is Mike Osborne, and as Andrew has already touched upon, I am the founder and CEO of a company called Accessible Me Limited. Today's session is Unlocking Inclusive Learning, and we will be looking at how generative AI, things like ChatGPT, generative AI art, is revolutionizing the way that we do accessibility in learning. We will cover elements of accessibility and what it is at the start, but we're not going to deep dive on that today. I've done sessions on that in the past. Some of you may have been on those already. Some of you might be seeing me for the first time. Do use the chat, and if I am going too fast for anyone, put a little comment in there, and Andrew will use the private chat to let me know, and we'll move forward from there. With that, I'm going to do a bit of a AI intro.
Who will lead today's session?
Not sure if the degree into what that worked.
Okay. Inclusive learning, how generative AI is revolutionizing accessibility in e-learning. Please join me in welcoming Mike Osborne, CEO of Accessible Me, who will lead today's session.
So, as some of you may have gathered, or others may not have, that was a short introduction that was actually generated by AI. But it took a few moments to write the script. I used AI to generate the script, tools like ChatGPT, copied and pasted the script into this tool called Synthesia. And once I clicked generate, within a few minutes, I had an email to say that this video was available. Now, the great thing about that is if I want to do a transcript or a text alternative, the captions on screen, all of that is already generated in advance. I'm not having to create these things new. And already I'm getting a heads up on accessibility. There are some lip syncing issues. By no means is AI perfect yet, but I mean, it's learning all the time. these tools learn like we do, and it's exponential. And what with quantum computing on the verge as well, I think these things are only going to get better and only going to get more exciting. So who am I? If you want to, I am Mike Osborne, as I say, the founder and CEO of Accessible Me. And if you want to scan the QR code on the screen there, you'll be able to connect with me on LinkedIn. My name is fairly unique, so if you search me, you should be able to find me again, and there will be details at the end of the session. So what are we looking at today? Ultimately, through the session, I'll be talking you through 3 different areas, and thank you, Andrew, for sharing. So we've got some people confident already, some people who are somewhat confident, others who are aware of not where to source. So good amount of votes, and hopefully this session will talk you through exactly what AI is, what accessibility is, and how the two can complement. So what we're going to look at is how generative AI can enhance accessibility in e-learning specifically, not just on the web. We're going to look at some of the ethical challenges and practical solutions. So I don't know how many of you have been, whether this is your first session or whether you've joined a few, but you might have seen in the chat recently when we were talking about video tools, they mentioned some really exciting tools, some really cool stuff, but tools that do eye correction. So you may notice I look to the left, to the right sometimes. But what happens if you have a astigmatism or a lazy eye? Do you know what's it going to do in terms of correcting the vision? Or similarly, I myself have Tourette's. You may have seen a few neck jerks. How's the AI, if I had an AI avatar, for example, going to try and replicate me? I do think there are some challenges around the ethical side of things, and it does actually go beyond privacy for me, and we'll touch more on that later in the session. And finally, I'll give you some examples of AI driven inclusive learning. So without further ado, let's get started. Through the session, we're going to look at the key principles of accessible design. We're going to look at generative AI in e-learning and the impact. We're going to look at the practical applications, as I noted, and also the ethical considerations. So 4 key areas today, and we're going to start with the accessibility overview. So what is accessibility in learning? And we'll start by looking at the key principles. So generally, broadly speaking, in terms of defining accessibility, you're looking at complying with what's called the WCAG, or Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. These are a set of guidelines. The latest is 2.2, but the accessibility guidelines 3.0 are in development, and they are nearly there. Do check them out. But one of the things you may find is the language used is quite complex, and it may actually be overwhelming. There are people who have already tried to tackle that specifically for learning and development. So I do recommend talking about taking a look at Susie Miller's book. She quite literally wrote a book on accessibility in learning. But broadly speaking, it means, is your content perceivable? So can people engage with it? Can they see the content if they are able to see? Can they hear the content? And if not, can they engage with it through their keyboards, through their assistive technology? So first of all, can they actually interact? Next, we're looking at operable. Operable means, okay, I can actually see the learning. It's loaded for me. I can engage with it, but can I actually take part in all of the challenges? If I ask you to comment in the chat, can everyone do that? If you've got limited mobility, for example, perhaps not. Also, if I need to navigate through a keyboard and I haven't set up the reading content in the correct order, there's also going to be some challenges. Next, we're looking at understandable. And when it comes to being understandable, is the content at the right level? Can I go through the content and understand it in a way that suits me? AI has a particular advantage here in terms of adaptability. Quite often we've heard about the Netflixification of learning. And I think the challenge of the Netflixification of learning is it tries to make us all go through the same content. And what we actually need is adaptive, personalized learning, both to go with our learning styles, but also to help people with disabilities too. But the great thing about AI is you could all be going through the same module, but it would look at, okay, where are you on this journey? And to what point are you looking to learn? Are you looking to kind of get to a mastery degree level, or am I just looking for some basic awareness of what to do? How am I feeling today? And how much time do I have available right now to learn? As it gets to know you as well, we can also adapt the learning even further to go, okay, do you have any disabilities? To get to know them. So, for example, if you have dyslexia, it might avoid long blocks of text, and it might generate some small bullet points to help you digest in a different way. Or it might even use video tools to generate the AI and allow you to listen and to watch if you prefer to learn it that way. Finally, we're looking at robust. And robust essentially means, does it work on a range of different devices? So I'm presenting on a laptop here. I imagine many of you are joining on PC, but some of you may be joining on mobile, on tablets, and some of you may be also using assistive technologies. So technologies to actually help you engage with the experience and learn just as others would in other ways on this call. So let's look at the current challenges. Essentially, there are three key challenges at the moment. So there are barriers to inaccessible navigation and design. So we touched upon okay, can people perceive the content, but can they actually engage with it start to finish? At Accessible Me, we have three key offerings. Number one is we audit content against the Web Accessibility Guidelines. Number two is we provide a report and a service and help people get there. And number three is training. On my team, for the people that help me with the audits, I have blind auditors, I have auditors who are deaf, and sometimes they will be able to start a solution built in something like Articulate Rise or some other platforms, and they may be able to navigate through the first few slides so they can perceive it. Then there may be a blocker, an interaction, something they have to do, which means they can't actually progress any further in the learning. These are all the kind of things we're looking to avoid. Next, we have gaps, so a lack of captioning or alternative text. Missing alternative text is probably one of the most common, along with poor contrast and things like that, is probably one of the most common issues on all websites, not just with e-learning. And certainly when I attend the Learning Tech conference, obviously you've got the wonderful conference side and you've got the exhibition. It's amazing, but not all that unsurprising. As you walk around, you're probably going to see the same old accessibility challenges time and time again. That's actually why I founded the company a couple of months ago. Finally, we have static and non-adaptable learning paths. So there are little to no text or little to no alternatives. So for example, if I'm being forced to watch a video that doesn't have captions, then I'm going to have challenges. If I don't have headphones at the time, so not necessarily if I'm hard of hearing, but if I have a situational disability, I'm in a noisy office and I don't have headphones, am I still able to engage with this content? Also, I think there's a big kind of debate around learning styles, and I'm not going to get into learning styles right now, but learning styles aside, it's certainly true that people do have learning preferences. They have preferences in the way they enjoy content. Some people may enjoy video, others may think, oh, that presenter's speaking a little slowly, I'd rather watch the caption. Some people may prefer to listen to audiobooks in their car. All of these things, by making your content available into different formats, you are making your content more accessible to more and more people. And ultimately, with tools as they are today, you can do voice to text, text to voice, and broadly speaking, from there you can translate to a variety of different areas. So if you have your script and you have your AI may be able to go, okay, give me a video script of this, give me an interactive scenario, give me a branching scenario. That you can use the AI to generate it in different ways, and you can also then say, okay, present it in this way. Give me the snapshot. Give me the meetings from the minutes from this meeting. Even on sessions like this, if you have tools like I use Otter AI, for example, whenever I do a Teams meet or a Google Meet, at the end of the meeting with Otter AI, we get a lovely transcript which is time-stamped, you have the video, you have the audio, but the AI actually gives you a beautiful summary of, okay, these are the discussion points, and these are the action points. If you imagine applying that kind of tech to these conferences, we could quite literally get off the end of the session. It could look at the chat, the things that you've found interesting, or perhaps not. It can take all the things we've discussed and send a summary almost on completion of the module, of the session. So there's some really exciting things to come from there. So how do we overcome these challenges? This is where the meat of the model, today's talk, comes in, and we're going to be looking at GenAI and e-learning. So with the rise of generative AI, I don't seem to have everything on my slide there, but ultimately AI comes down to tools that can, oh, sorry, I'm just going to load the notes on the side. There we go. So what we're looking at is GPT modules, automatic captioning tools, and things like text-to-speech applications. So GPT models, we're probably all used to ChatGPT now, but it doesn't matter what software we have. We have Synthesia for video, we have DALL-E, Gemini, Google tools, Bard, it was another one. Automatic captioning tools now. YouTube has some automatic captioning, for example, but the captions aren't perfect. So even with tools like Adobe AI, you still need to check the captions. Don't assume that AI is perfect. And another reason for doing that is if you're not checking your captions, ultimately you haven't finished your work. You know, it's not fair for someone to need the captions, to rely on them, and to not have them available or not have them correct, because they ultimately will miss out on data. When we have text-to-speech applications as well, this is nothing new. There's obviously screen readers which use text-to-voice, and even tools like Microsoft Word these days have text-to-voice built in them. I'm one of those people, if I create a document and I'm QAing my work, I will use the text-to-voice to listen to my work, have it read to me, and I will spot issues that were there that I didn't realize, and that the things that the spell check didn't pick up on. Do engage with those tools, because it will help you QA your work, and also it'll help people who have disabilities and maybe some challenges in hearing, such as, for example, they might be deaf or hard of hearing, and really help them. But ultimately, the common thing with any of these tools is you have your input, and it's really, really important to focus on the prompts. If your prompts don't include things like the reading level, the reading age, the fact that you want to be considerate for people who have dyslexia, all of these things are going to make a difference. Then the AI does its process, it does its thing, and I think, let's face it, a lot of us, even if we take courses on ChatGPT and stuff, they don't necessarily need to go into the processes on how they do it. All we're interested is in the input. So that most courses will be around, this is how you brief GPT effectively, and then here's what it spits out as well. So the opportunities presented by generative AI in learning, and ultimately there are three key areas. And if you have your own thoughts, please do use the comments and drop them in the chat as well. But I think one of the biggest opportunities for generative AI in learning is personalization. So AI that tailors contents to individuals' needs. I mentioned earlier the ability to, if you have a course on, let's say, search engine optimization, it's going to ask you questions. Okay, what do you already know on SEO, and what level do you want to get to? Are you looking to do this for a job, or are you just looking to build up more on it? Are you a business owner? But also, okay, do you have any disabilities? Because what isn't fair as well, and is unjust, is content isn't accessible to you. My mission at Accessible Me is to make all the world's content accessible to all the world's people, and I strongly believe AI can do that. So as I mentioned earlier, we have text, voice to text and text to voice. These tools can convert to tools like video, braille readers. The personalization is going to be strong, not just on the explosion of content, but the personalization, as Ego mentioned, more content isn't what we need. It's more personal experience, personalized content and personalized experiences. Then we have automation. I think most of us may be using ChatGPT and things like that to automate our content. So we know that it speeds up content creation, but you can also use it to generate your captions, to generate your alternative text, but do make sure you are checking it. There are tools out there that do that generate alternative text for you. And if you actually use tools like Microsoft Office and you use the alternative text, it's giving it a go. It is trying to auto caption for you, but it does have the prompt in there. This caption was AI generated, and your learners will hear that if that's what you're using. Finally, there's inclusivity. So real-time translation tools and enhance access. I think recently tools like Zoom and Teams have actually got some cool features. So if you are using captions, or if you're speaking and you have the captions on, the AI tech has got it to a stage now where it can translate into different languages almost in real time. Imagine how cool then that's going to be when it can sign live. It can also sign BSL, British Sign Language, ASL, American Sign Language, all at the same time, and how inclusive these conversations will be. Further, imagine a scenario where if you are someone who signs yourself and that is your preferred method of conversations, then if you can sign to your webcam and it can recognize the gestures, then you're going to be able to have a more engaging session. It will speed up the point in which you can engage with the session as well. So we've got another video. I'm just going to load this one.
Hey, can you make me a prince?
There is a lot of gray area in make me a prince. I could just make you a prince.
Oh, no.
Right, you'll be snuggled up with that dude for the rest of your life.
Y'all see my palace?
Be specific with your words. The deal is in the detail.
Got it.
Which I don't really understand, because if she already likes you, why change?
I told you, she has to marry a prince.
I just want to go home, man.
We don't necessarily need to get into watching the whole Aladdin movie here, so I'll go back to the presentation. But the point of me showing you that video is the deal is in the detail, much as Will Smith's Genie said in the film. Now, when it comes to generative AI, can we get the slide deck right, please? Okay, we have. The deal is in the detail. So when it comes to using tools like generative AI, make sure you are including accessibility prompts in your brief. If you've actually written all the content yourself, you can actually copy that into ChatGPT, for example, and ask, okay, what is the reading level for this? Where might people have challenges? Do I have any acronyms or specialist terms which are as yet undefined? You can ask it, okay, how inclusive is the language am I using? At Accessible Me, we prefer the social model of accessibility, focusing on we are people with disabilities as opposed to being defined by the disability. So rather than being a dyslexic person, I'm a person with dyslexia, and the challenge isn't me, myself, as the individual, it's the way in which things have been designed. So now we're going to look at the practical applications of AI tools in actions. So for that, we look at things like alternative text, closed captioning, and adaptive learning. So designing accessible learning, and Andrew, I'm seeing a prompt here. Would you like to come in?
I just wanted to give you some feedback on the text. So just something that we've picked up on is the session didn't have closed captioning on the video at the start, and just think the irony that we were about to talk about closed captioning and we didn't have it turned on. We've adjusted that, Ben, and Jessica behind the scenes have worked on that. If people refresh the page, the closed captioning is now available. But it's just a really interesting point that we go past all of these things without actually realizing. We don't realize until someone highlights it to us that we need to
Yes.
do these things. And I think it's really interesting when we go back to that poll, how confident are you in identifying key barriers? 15% very confident, 44% somewhat confident. I responded very confident to that poll. And then I've been involved in the team that hasn't managed to get the closed caption switched on. And it just goes to show that how confident we are on some of these things, particularly as you're going through all these tools. The conversation in the chat is amazing, going on about sign language and how the gaps are in the closed captioning and so on. It's just a brilliant microcosm of where some of the gaps are that we've got. And that's just all I wanted to jump in and pick up on. That was all.
Thank you so much for flagging that, and my apologies for the lack of captions in the video.
Wasn't down to you. I mean, the captions on the video, because again, we don't pick it up. We've made that assumption. There's another poll in the chat, by the way, everybody. Thank you. I'll duck out again now. Thanks.
All good. But I think actually what is raised is a really interesting point, in that if you have captions burned into the videos by default, actually you can be putting people at a disadvantage. If you have dyslexia, if you have low literacy, if you are a non-native English speaker and these English captions are putting in, even if you have conditions like ADHD, for example, captions can actually be a detractor. So we think about, okay, you see it on social media all the time, either they are burnt in and stuff, but actually the assistive tech might have a difficult job in engaging with these content, because it might, yes, I know AI can start to read content on the video a bit more, but that's going to increase the computing power. If you've actually uploaded your closed caption files as a separate SRT or file to YouTube, to Articulate, then it will have the timestamps, it will have the text, and more importantly for me is the sustainability. So one of my big bugbears with AI is the amount of power it uses. It takes an awful lot of power to use AI to generate an image, and we've seen a few sessions this week on using AI to generate videos. My main concern is the power used by AI, and we'll touch on more on that in the ethical piece in due course. But ultimately, when it comes to designing accessible learning, we're looking at alternative texts. So you can use AI generated alt text for images. We have captions, so you can use real-time captions for live or recorded sessions. So as it has been flagged, the ability to turn on live captioning is the thing now. Live captioning, it's got a lot better than it was, but it's by no means perfect. But what live captioning does do is, if you let the speakers know that there is live captioning, it can force them to slow down a bit. It can force them to speak a bit more clearly, articulate more. And the more slowly and clearly you are speaking, the more accurate the generative AI is going to be. So it actually can be used as a tool to enhance the way we present as well. And then there is language simplification. So AI-enabled language translation for multilingual users, to be able to give people the content in their own native language, but also to preserve languages as well. I remember at the Learning Technologies earlier this year, there was a session on helping the Ukrainians who have sadly been affected in the war. Now, one of the big challenges is they are Russian speaking and don't necessarily speak English. Now, if we could translate into their local language, and indeed translate to any local language, then we get to preserve languages as well. Why should English be the preferred language? Why should French be the second? Good. Let's help people learn in a language that suits them, including the sign languages, please. Andrew, we did run a poll. What were the results of that, if you don't mind me asking?
Back in again. What aspect of generative AI excites you most in e-learning? Over half have said personalization. Now, self-selecting group, it might be with choosing personalization because we've got people here who, from an accessibility perspective. So 56% chose personalization. A quarter chose inclusivity, and 19%, 1 in 5, chose automation.
Nice. And it's So it surprises me a little bit to hear automation lower on the list, but that's by no means a bad thing. Personalization to me is very much where it's at and where it should be. My personal goal, which I set a few years ago, is to make experiences really, really cool and engaging and immersive for someone who is deafblind. I have designed for people who are deaf. I have designed for people who are blind. But when you have someone who is deafblind, you take a lot of those, what you do for one or the others, away, and it becomes a bigger challenge. These kind of more difficult challenges are exactly the things I want to design for, because I want to ensure that nobody is being left behind. So touching on my Ukrainian point a while ago, if you imagine a young black girl in Ukraine, a really promising career ahead of her, but then gets injured in the bomb, and maybe she damages her hearing, her sight, and maybe even has loss of limbs. So she may pick up several disabilities overnight. I still would like a world where she can succeed and become #1 on the Forbes most successful businesses. These are the kind of challenges I'm looking to crack, and also I think AI can help me do that. So originally I said by the time I was 40, that was my challenge. But because of tools like ChatGPT and also generative AI, I strongly believe I can use these text prompts, these personalization aspects, and the combination of braille readers and input devices to create immersive branching scenarios that are accessible. Because yes, you can have the text and the visuals on the screen, but so long as they have the alternative text and the text, the prompts, and the options, any learner can decide where that's going. I might even be able to say, okay, would you prefer this to do this in a video way or in a text way, and personalize it all the more that way as well. So in terms of delivering accessible learning experiences, we are looking at adaptive learning platforms that adjust content based on performance. I think ChatGPT, for example, oh no, not ChatGPT, Articulate have introduced AI, which is going to help you create the tools. I would like to see in time these platforms adapt content based on our performance, but also AI enhanced tools like ReadSpeaker that can assist people with different disabilities. So can I increase the font size? Can I decrease the font size if it's too big? Can I change the contrast between the foreground and background? And do be mindful as well that when you are designing your learning, you're designing your websites and things like that, people might be looking at this in a way you didn't expect. So they might have designed it in your standard view, and the person engaging with the content might be using dark mode on their device, which may alter some of your colors. You can use AI tools to actually check how people can engage with your content, and even to these days, even in this day and age, you can also make corrections as well. So next we're looking at cross-platform accessibility. Now, when I used the POUR acronym earlier, and forgive me, I'm not sure what's happened to the visual on the screen. It certainly didn't look like that in PowerPoint. But the cross-platform aspect really it comes down to the R. Is it robust? Does it work on mobile devices? Does it work on desktop devices? Does it work on tablets? And ultimately, does it work on a variety of platforms such as LMS and different websites? I think I did upload my slides. So hopefully you can follow along, but if not, the slides will certainly be available at the end of the session. And now we are going to look at the ethical consideration with AI. So this is part 4. I think we're roughly about half hour in, and I'm looking to protect plenty of time for Q&A. So now we're looking at ethical considerations, and there's several which we're going to cover. There is the AI bias, there is privacy concerns, and there's also the human AI collaboration. So let's start with bias in AI. If you do have the slides, if you've been able to download them, then you can see the chart in large. I do appreciate the text on the chart in this particular screenshot is very small, but just to give you an idea of the kind of things it covers is there's a risk of bias in generated content. AI is ultimately looking at the web, the expansive web, and it's using content from reputable sources. It's also using content in forums and stuff like that. Unfortunately, that does mean that there are some biases that have crept through in the e-learning as well. So, for example, if you ask it to generate an image of board of directors, chances are it's going to generate an image of older white gentlemen. It's less likely that it's going to include diversity, such as kind of different races, or indeed people with different skin conditions, such as vitiligo, people with disability, physical disabilities, or people with prosthetics. So there's a risk of bias in generating content in the tools themselves, and these are the kind of things that, with good briefing, can be overcome. So please don't accept the first draft of what you're given. You must remember that with ChatGPT and stuff like that, that these are meant to be conversation tools. That's the reason it's called ChatGPT. You're meant to engage with them, give them feedback, and that will reflect over time. So AI may reflect biases found in the data. If you are doing surveys, for example, learner needs analysis and stuff like that, if you are sending out a survey that in itself is not accessible, so if somebody has challenges accessing the form, or completing the form, then those voices aren't going to be heard. Then your data set is biased, and even if you are putting that into these different tools, the AI may reflect the biases found in data. So you do need to challenge the AI as well. So there are different ways we can mitigate these biases. So to use diverse data sets, do your research. You can put in your prompts that you want to use reputable sources, such as universities, science review journals, your likes of Harvard Business Review. But we absolutely need to make sure there is human oversight and regular audits. So when it starts with the data collection and preparation, make sure that we are reporting on things. Then, but we've got a diverse data set. Next, you're looking at doing your models. So you're testing, you're checking the quality of what you've got, and you're looking for biases. Then you're evaluating your model. So you are testing that, you're evaluating your model, you're seeing what is being spat out, because remember, these generative AI models are learning models. Then when you're ready, you can deploy, you can reevaluate, and when you're ready, you can roll out. So, and just because it's live, it doesn't mean that it's finished. There are reasons, if you do software as service, that we do different updates, etc. So try a continuous cycle of development. Then we're on to privacy concerns. Now, this is a big one with GPT, I'm aware, and that's handling data ethically. So when it comes to sensitive data, we must protect learner data in our AI-driven systems. So the best ways to do that is to anonymize the data, to allow for transparency, and make sure we are GDPR compliant. An example might be when it comes to accessibility, you might ask if they're signing up for a session, do you have any accessible needs? Now, a number of people, even if they do have them, may not disclose that they have this ability to accessible needs because of fear of discrimination. So, but if you were to flip it and go, okay, this is the menu of the things we offer. Would you like captions? Are you in a noisy environment? You can build in these things and remember their choices. But by anonymizing data, you allow people to answer more honestly. So I have a survey that is live at the moment. It's anonymous for those that want to take part anonymously. And what I'm interested in is about hearing people's different lived experiences. So I can anonymize that data and create buyer personas, customer personas from a lens of people with disabilities. Can they engage with your content? And I will make that available in due course. So I mentioned the collaboration earlier. What's really important is human AI collaboration. So AI needs to support, but not replace our human AI, human insight. So, as an example, when I'm sure many of us may have used tools to, or at least explored. I'd be surprised if you hadn't at this stage. Can you generate me a lesson plan? Could you create me the slide content? You know, and things that are done that way are pretty easy to spot now. You know, it might be the use of the rocket emoji. It might be US spelling in the UK course. It might also be AI's obsession to capitalize each letter in a heading rather than using the sentence case. So these are all things that we need to be checking for, but it goes beyond that. We can use AI tools, for example, to go, okay, how many images in our learning don't have alternative text, but we need to check the alternative text that is being generated. So there are these hybrid learning models. Hybrid learning models are what offer the best results for accessibility and the ones I suggest people explore. So on to key takeaways, and there should be a poll, I believe. So generative AI enhances accessibility in learning. So it can transform accessibility in learning, but it does require careful implementation. You know, so once I, in due course, as I say, release these learner personas with different disabilities, evaluate your learning with these different personas. You can also Google accessibility personas and find several online. Make sure you are evaluating your learning that you design or buy in, and go, okay, can everyone engage with this? And then also think this intersectionality. If I am deaf and I am blind, can I engage with this? Do you know, and push yourself more and more. Next, you want to identify the ethical challenges. So there's the ethical oversight of to ensure fairness and privacy. In my previous job, for example, it was really important as a company that does lots in D&I and helps people of minority ethnicities exceed in their role, to have diverse speakers. When we explored tools like Synthesia, the feedback wasn't just around the lip sync, although it has improved significantly since. It's okay, yes, they have a range of diverse avatars, but in using an avatar, I am taking a job away for somebody who may already be underrepresented. This happens time and time again, and definitely is happening in the disability space as well. So do not take jobs away from disabled people or people with disabilities. We want to create jobs, and there is no better experience than learning from somebody's first-hand experience. In future, I want to be chairing sessions with people with disabilities as opposed to speaking on their behalf. So we need to identify these different challenges so that we can create fairness, so that we can create privacy. And ultimately, we want to drive inclusive learning, which is supported by AI tools. So we're going to leverage AI to break down the barriers, to make sure we have good color contrast, to make sure we have captions and transcripts, and to make sure that people can learn in ways that they want to. On my opening slide, down at the bottom right-hand side, I had anyone, anywhere, anytime, any place on every device. You'll notice on this key takeaways slide then that I have everyone, everywhere, every time, every place, and every device. So I want a world where anybody can engage with it, regardless of your background, regardless of your disabilities, regardless of your sex or sexual orientation. I want it to work every time you want to engage with the learning, wherever you are, whatever device you're learning. But this is the model we need to move to. And with that, thank you everyone for listening today. I do believe in the moment we can review the impact of some of the polls, and I do think we got some time for Q&A as well. So thank you everyone for connecting with me, and I've been Mike Osborne from Accessible Me. Do connect on LinkedIn, and yeah, let's hear your comments and your feedback.
Awesome. Fabulous session, Michael, and we've got loads of time for questions. We've got about 15 minutes or so, and there's some brilliant questions. Awesome session. Some of the feedback is great. Somebody has said specifically, I think it was Jamila, I can't see who it was, sorry, Atika said loving the polls, and really interesting to see that stuff coming through. The polls are still open.
Fantastic.
Keep responding to them, everybody. We're going to pick up some of the questions, and then we'll pick up some of the polls. Great question from Stephen. Stephen asked this question. Lots of people have voted this question up for you. Gaining buy-in from stakeholders on any new tech is like pulling teeth in organizations.
Yes.
What's been your experience of dealing with a variety of stakeholders, particularly within this space?
So, funny enough, people often come to Accessible Me for two reasons. Number one is they have been approached by a client who says, we need the content to be accessible. So, they're coming at it almost from I need to do this because it's a compliance piece. They've come to us because they don't have the time or resources to do it themselves. But often what we hear time and time again is I get quite often a passionate manager. So there's either someone will come to me and go, okay, I need to convince the leadership team, my superiors, or it might be a manager who goes, I need to convince my team because I'm saying they need to make sure they've got alternative text on all their images. And I'm asking these things of them, and they are pushing back. They're saying we already don't have the time. We're already overworked. Now, to me, if you're not designing for everyone, if you don't have the captions, etc., your work isn't finished, and we should not be selling it as such. So ultimately, in terms of what I'm looking to do, a week today, actually, I am at the Learning Network event. I am launching the Accessibility Escape Room. And what we're looking to do there is to build empathy by people almost experiencing it for themselves. So I'm encouraging people to come along or sign up for a future session on that one. And the whole point of that is to build empathy. And I think the more, and there's a couple of ways to address this and get buy-in. So number one, so empathy is definitely a great thing, but also beyond empathy, there's the statistics. So for example, 1 in 12 men and 1 in 200 women are colorblind. That 10% of the population have dyslexia. So if I think around 400 people signed up for today's session, for example, if you think about that, there's quite a good chance that somebody on this session has colorblindness or is dyslexic, or has dyscalculia, all these different things. So when you think about, okay, who do you have in the room? That's another, and ultimately one that if you're not listening yet, might make your ears perk up a little bit. Accessibility is good for SEO. Crawlers go out on the websites to review your content and to put that on the search engine.
Yep.
If you don't have alternative text, if you don't have captions, you are missing a trick on SEO, and Google will penalize you as a result. So I know this is a learning focused session, but if you want your learning to be discoverable and indexable, then yes, you need to be providing these things, and hopefully those three things are a reason to engage.
Awesome. And Stephen's commented, he's actually said, thanks for the answer. Often it's about old historic attitudes that are the barrier, which I think is a really interesting point. He's doing his best to use data to change that. And what do you know?
Data is fantastic.
And he's actually said, you know what? I'm colorblind.
Yeah.
Keep up the good work. So there we go. There we go.
To pick up on that point on the data as well, quite often one of the reasons why things might not be happening is because the CEOs, it's not that they don't care, not that they're not passionate, it's just they don't have the time. So if you're going, hey, Mr. CEO, here's my 45-page report on why this is important, there's a good chance it's not going to get looked at. So again, use these generative AI tools to take your report and go, give a snapshot that's suitable for a CEO. That's going to help you get that buy-in. Because all they're interested in is the key points out. In some regards, will it make money? Businesses are selfish like that. But
absolutely,
ultimately, the people benefit in the long term.
So something that we have in the UK, I know we have people outside the UK, but in the UK we have gender pay gap reporting. One of the things we have to report is the gender pay gap. Something that I've done in organisations where I've worked is we reported the gender pay gap, we also reported the ethnicity pay gap, and we also reported the disability pay gap. And it's astonishing when you start reporting disability pay gaps, because people actually start it becomes more transparent, and it is using
Yes.
that data to be able to explain what's going on. Let's pick up the second question. So, question from Mike and for the group. This was from Joe McFadden, and he asked, interested in best practice examples or guidelines that focus on accessibility for neurodiverse learners specifically. What have you got relating to neurodiversity specifically,
Yeah.
Michael?
So your best resource is going to be people who are neurodiverse. And I know that sounds a bit of a cop-out answer, but there's a number of sayings that once you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. Once you've met one person with ADHD, you've met one person with ADHD. So we need to stop trying to do one-size-fits-all blanket solutions. But ultimately, when it comes to dealing with neurodiversity, have those conversations. You can check out the results of our polls and stuff, but consistent navigation and setting expectations is going to be quite important. So, for example, I have ADHD, Tourette's, autism, depression, and anxiety. So all of these are kind of invisible kind of conditions that you wouldn't necessarily think about looking at me. So I'm probably well positioned to answer the question on my experiences, not on other people. But if with the ADHD aspect of me, and I think even with the younger generation as well, everything these days is vying for our attention. You get the notifications going, "Hey, you've got an email." Meanwhile, you've got a notification, "Hey, you've got a new YouTube video as well." If you're trying to learn, all this is going to have challenges. Also, capturing the way in which you capture people's attention. So I am terrible. If I am in a meeting and there's lots of small talk, you've lost me. If you want to get the best from me in a meeting, engage me early on and get the key points out of the way with. I'm not saying there's not a time for small talk, but if I'm already busy and I'm going to be in hyper focus, I'm going to be working away in the background, because you've lost me at that stage. So ultimately, it's a case of, I think, make things clear. Agendas are quite good because they give us a process to follow. But if you go off the agenda and you're on the autistic scale like me, that again can throw you. So, but again, personalization. Use these generative AI tools. Personalize to the people that you are engaging with.
Absolutely. Question from Catherine. Catherine, thank you for all your comments in the chat, by the way, as well. Really interesting conversation. Accuracy of AI signing, is it trained and quality assured by native signers and interpreters? Have you seen particularly good use of BSL or ASL sign language?
Some, but it's in its infancy at the moment. Sadly, it hasn't had the funding, say, compared to training things on English, for example. But I think the more you see things like on Strictly, having people who are deaf, who are blind, on Big Brother, all these different scenarios, representation matters, and that quite often pushes the envelope. In terms of specific good tools, I'm not too sure. There's a service which does really good. So if you want people to have BSL or sign interpreters on your website, and I'm not sure if it works on their eLearning, but hopefully it does. You can actually have it where you hover over different sections on the website, and a live signer will show up. Now, I'm sure there has to be some kind of generative AI thing for that, given the breadth of content it's covering. So I'm sure these tools are out there, but also remember that I say these are learning things. If you look at Google Translate compared to what it was 15 years ago, it's worlds apart, and it's only going to keep the rate in which they're learning is exponential, and we have quantum computing on the horizon. As soon as we have quantum computing and AI, things are going to be very, very different.
Was the really interesting conversation going on about that signing as well within the chat, and it was the I love the comment from somebody where they were told, well, could we take that person off? Do we have to have that that person signing on the screen, I find it distracting. And a brilliant response. I missed who it was, but I actually said, okay, so we take the volume off then, shall we? It's that idea that, well, you wouldn't do that. So, why should we have to do that for people? I think it's interesting. I've got, we've
Well, I
probably
think
got time
again,
for
for me,
go
that
ahead.
comes down to the personalization, the ability to have it on or off, to the ability to cut the background music in your audio, because quite often you might be speaking in a video, and if you've got these background effects, you're impacting it that way. So the more we can customize and personalize the experience, the better. So there is an element to that point.
Yeah. One last question, which we'll pick up on, which is the AI avatar creation. So we've seen loads of really great avatar creation, but some people picked it up straight away. You mentioned it yourself, the Synthesia one that you used, the lip reading, it wasn't good. How can we work around that? Is there an issue that we've got using these avatars for people preferring to lip read? What are your thoughts on that, Michael?
I think, once again, these tools are learning at such an incredible rate that that Synthesia one has been on the website since I joined 2 years ago, whatever. It's probably about time that they update their default off-the-shelf one. And ultimately, though, it's one of those things. If you're prepared to pay for it, you can get better results. That was just a free example, that I screen recorded, and it is going to get better. But ultimately, if you have a choice to give a real person a job, I encourage people to do that. So by all means, use the green screen, use AI to change the background or whatever, but yeah, we're worried about our jobs. We're worried about what's going to happen to us in L&D if AI kicks off. Everyone in every industry is having that. So let's not put the photographers and videographers and editors out of business. Let them use their AI enhanced tools to do their job better, just like we should.
Yeah, lovely. I said we won't go into any questions. I just got some polls, so go back and look at the polls results here. So which of the following is not best practice for handling sensitive learner data? 99% of people said storing personal data indefinitely. What do you know? Everybody knows the answer. Biggest takeaway from today's session, and the 2/3 of people, we've had 50 odd votes on this. 2/3 of people have said understanding the role of AI in inclusive design, which I think is fabulous. So people actually understanding how to use the technology. And the last question, which aspect of GenAI and eLearning are you most likely to implement moving forward? Over half the group here have talked about inclusivity. Again, we're a self-selecting group. Again, we're here talking about inclusivity. So you would expect to be weighted towards that. But 56% have talked about inclusivity. It's only 26% about personalization now. And again, 19%, 1 in 5 talking about automation. So really interesting results. A massive thank you, everybody, for your chat. The chat, I've said this before, Mike's the expert. He talks about this stuff, but actually we've got so much expertise in the audience, and all of the comments and the things that you put in, and I know people have had the value from that. Please say thank you to Michael in the chat so he can sit there afterwards and read all your comments and not agonize over whether it was any good or not. So please do say thank you to Michael so he's got that information there. A massive thank you again, like I said, to everybody here for your time this morning. Really great session. I'm loving these sessions, absolutely loving these sessions. Our next session starts at 11:30 UK time, and that's the Emperor's New Clothes, why most workplace training fails to impact organizational performance. Really important session. And we've got Elephants Don't Forget, and we've also got Phil from PIMFA, Personal Investment Management and Financial Advice, going through, well, why do we not actually get the impact that we have from our learning development? Thank you for your time, everybody. Delighted to have everybody back, and we'll see you again soon. Take care, everybody.